guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are back with another speed build. We are building in the world of Willow Creek on the Crick Cabana lot, which is a 20 by 15 lot, and we are building a tiny house. It's not actually any similar to real life tiny houses because it's way too big, but within the system of the game it's still considered a tiny house. But even for the game it's on the bigger side of what a tiny house can be because it has 100 tiles, so it's really at the very limit of the game's tier system. It's a tier 3 tiny house, so a small home, and it has space for 2 adults and 1 teen or an older child maybe. It is also built in the shotgun style, and I wanted to talk a little bit about this because I don't really want to say research because I have to admit I only read the Wikipedia article, but it was still kind of interesting. And I didn't know a lot about this type of houses because they are, not very common where I'm from, but apparently they are really typical for the southern part of the United States. So for Louisiana, New Orleans, as far as I read, but also for some other states. And it was actually quite interesting to learn more about this house style. In the world of Willow Creek in The Sims, these houses are kind of very common because apparently Willow Creek is inspired by New Orleans. Please correct me if I'm completely mistaken here, but New Orleans apparently is a town where these shotgun houses are very present. Now, I didn't know a lot about this type of builds. I only knew that they had this very rectangular, boxy shape, and I think I knew there are different explanations for why these houses are called shotgun style homes. And one explanation that I heard before, and I think it even was in another person's speed build, was that they are called like this because of the specific way that they are built. Because apparently in traditional shotgun style homes, all the rooms are behind each other, so all the rooms are connected. There's no corridor or anything, and all the rooms are just connected to each other. And normally also the doors of all the rooms and also the front door and the back door are on one level, I'd say. And so the explanation for the name is that if you would shoot through the front door, the bullet would go all through the entire house and out of the back door again if the doors were all open, because all the doors are in a row basically. So this was the explanation I heard. There are apparently also different theories of why these houses are called like this. And one theory says that this type of house was not invented in the southern states, but it could already be found in some African countries and in Haiti, for example, in the 18th century, and was then brought to the United States by people from these countries. And in the language of the African Fon people, there's the word togun, completely wrong pronunciation probably. I also put it on the screen so you can read it and maybe you can tell me how this is pronounced, but this word means something like a place of assembly. And so the theory claims that this word was brought to the States together with this style of houses, but later it wasn't really understood anymore. And so the word togun was kind of morphed into the word shotgun. So there are different theories about why this type of houses are called like this. I thought it was quite interesting. It seems to still be discussed even nowadays where exactly the name comes from. Now, the characteristic of these houses are that, as I already said, they are very rectangular, they have a very boxy shape, and traditional shotgun houses sometimes only have 2 rooms behind each other and sometimes even more rooms, and they're all connected. And in this article there was also a floor plan shown of a traditional shotgun house, and on the floor plan you first entered the living room, then went through the bedroom into the kitchen, and the kitchen was where the back door was. So I didn't think the situation with the bedroom being a walk-through room and being connected to all of the other rooms like this, that didn't seem very ideal to me. So for the house that I built, I wanted to have it a little bit differently because it just seems a little bit more comfortable. So I decided to build a little bump out to the left, which I used to build 2 bedrooms. And I know that's not something very typical for this type of home. So it's not what you would find in a traditional shotgun home, at least from what I could tell from doing this little research but I just thought that maybe they modernized it over time and they just added this bump out later on to just have more space for these bedrooms and for having the bedrooms in a more separate space, and that you wouldn't have to walk through the bedrooms to get to the back of the house. Now, you could also already see me doing the floor plan, and I still wanted to stay close to this traditional form, so there is actually no corridor and all the rooms are connected, but the bedrooms are to the side. So if you want to walk from the front door to the back door, you will first get through the kitchen and dining space, then you'll get through the living room, and then at the end there's some sort of a study space or multi-purpose space that you will see better when we get to the actual interior. Apart from that, what else did I read? So I also remember reading that the first shotgun homes did not have a bathroom on the inside, so probably it was in a separate space on the outside, and only later on bathrooms were added either at the back of the house or they were added to the inside, and they had a very small corridor in front of them so that you could actually close the door. But yeah, in my case, I added a bathroom next to the master bedroom. And yeah, so again, you will see this when we get to the interior. And also traditional shotgun homes used to have fireplaces, as far as I read, and chimneys built on the inside of the house. And I think at the beginning of my building process, I thought about adding a fireplace in the living room later on. And I even placed some sort of a vent on the roof above the place where the fireplace would go. And then later I completely forgot about this, or I abandoned this idea. I'm not quite sure. And then I just moved the vent to the area of the roof above where the range hood in the kitchen was, so that it would make some sort of sense at least. Also, real life shotgun homes had rather high ceilings and high walls for air conditioning reasons, so that the warm air would rise up and the lower parts of the rooms would be a little bit cooler, because the areas where they were originally built used to be rather warm, and so yeah, it makes sense to build houses in a way that this wouldn't be too much of a problem. And then there were also different types of shotgun houses, and one is the camelback shotgun or the humpback shotgun. And I think there's also one of them in Willow Creek. And in this type of shotgun houses, there's a second floor built at the back of the house. So most of the house has only one floor, but there's some sort of a hump on the back of the house, which is connected to the last room of the ground floor. And the reason why it was built like this is that because most of the houses only one floor, the houses would usually be taxed as only one floor homes. And so you had to pay less, but you still had this additional second floor on the back of the house, if this makes sense. So I thought that was also kind of an interesting detail. Oh, I read one thing that I thought was really funny, but I think that was in a German Wikipedia article. And there it was mentioned that apparently there's some sort of a urban legend that ghosts are particularly attracted to shotgun houses. Again, because of the way that they're built and that all the doors are in one row, and that ghosts can easily pass through these houses, which I thought was really funny. And yeah, as we know, ghosts are definitely a thing in The Sims, so I don't know, maybe you could use this as a gameplay idea or something. So in conclusion, I think we could say that this house is maybe more shotgun inspired. So there are some aspects where I try to stick to the traditional characteristics of this house type, but then there are also some aspects where I took some more freedom because I thought it might have been modernized or something, but I hope you don't mind too much. And yeah, please let me know in the comments what you think about this. Now, I've almost completely talked over the exterior and the garden, and what I really wanted to achieve for this build was to have it look very much like springtime. So I really wanted to create a very flowery garden with lots of different colors, or not lots of different, because I pretty much stuck to yellow, blue, and white. Also, the exterior is very yellow, blue, and white. But I wanted to have it look very fresh, very spring-like and cheerful, because we are in April. So in the Northern Hemisphere where I live, we have spring right now. And so I really wanted to create something inspired by the season of spring. And also the interior, as you're going to see, is going to be very colorful. So initially I didn't even plan for it to become that colorful, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of color going on, and it's very interesting, as you will see in a bit. And what I didn't mention so far is that this is another pack restricted build, and it's actually another one pack tiny house, so it only uses Basegame and the BackyardStuff pack. Now, I mentioned in a video that I did a while ago that I was thinking about doing some sort of series where I'm building a tiny house for every pack, and while I do not really think that this is going to become something irregular on this channel, I still want to do a playlist for these types of builds, because now this is already the third one that I've done on the channel that only uses one pack, and that is a tiny house. I think I'm still going to do this from time to time, but it's not going to be an official series or anything. And I wanted to use the BackyardStuff pack because this is another one of the packs that has become free for a short time period. I'm not sure if it is still free, because I think this limited time is already over, so you might have to pay for it again now, but it was free to download for some time. And maybe some of you did this. I got the pack already last year and bought it while it was on sale. But I didn't use it a lot since then. Like the build buy stuff, I used it for another tiny house, which you might also spot in the background of this video. And I have to say that this pack is really not one of my favorite stuff packs. This is probably also why I didn't really use it that much so far. I was positively surprised by the cast stuff, because there was really some stuff in it that I didn't really think I would like that much, but which I actually kind of think is very nice and pretty. For example, this one hair that also has an ombre version, and also some of the clothing, like there are some t-shirts and some high-waisted jeans and things like that that I really like and that I have used sometime after I got the pack. But the build buy stuff is really not that much up my alley, I have to admit. And the main reason for this is that I think it's just the objects from this pack are just very, very stylized. And obviously this is just the style of the game. Like this Max's style is somewhat cartoonish, I'd say, and it's somewhat stylized. And there's nothing wrong with that, and I actually like this. But I think in this stuff pack, especially the flowers, they're just so extremely colorful and just so over the top. I don't even know how to explain it, but especially if you compare the plants and flowers from this pack to some packs that we got recently, you probably get what I mean. So some of the plants that we got in newer packs are just more on a realistic side, and they're more subtle and they have more fine details. They're just not super, I cannot think of the English word for this, but the flowers from this stuff pack just look like plastic flowers. They look so artificial, and I don't really like that. I think even for the standard of the game, it's just a little bit exaggerated, and there are hardly any more toned down swatches. Everything just screams with colors. And I know some people might like this and this might be exactly their style, but for me personally, that's not really what I want to go for in my game usually. And so I kind of never use the flowers from this pack, and also some of the other stuff like the furniture. I try to use a lot of it in this build, but some of the wood swatches don't go with any other wood swatches in the game, or barely with any other ones. So the wood swatch I end up using for the furniture in the dining room is some sort of an orangey brown tone, and we don't have this wood swatch on many other objects from other packs in the game. So yeah, it's a little bit difficult. And there are some objects from the pack which I really like. For example, there's a bowl with lemons that I also used in the kitchen, and there's also this bird feeder and a little birdhouse, which I also used in the garden because I also thought that birds really fit the spring theme that I was going for with this build. So I try to use as many of the objects from this pack in this build. But yeah, overall, I might not be the biggest fan of the style of the objects in this pack. And for me personally, they are just a little bit too exaggerated. But on the other hand, while I was building this and I was trying to explore this pack a little bit more, I found that some of the objects are maybe not as bad as I thought they were, and it grew a little bit more on me. But overall, yeah, it's still not my favorite pack, but I also don't think it's one of the worst ones. It was free right now, so if you downloaded it while it was free, you definitely did nothing wrong. So there's still a lot of stuff which you can use in game and which you can have fun with. And yeah, I wouldn't say it's in my top tier of stuff packs. But yeah, again, please let me know in the comments what you think about it. Do you like this pack? Have you used it? Have you gotten it while it was free? So yeah, I would love to hear about it. So yeah, let's talk about this build again, because I've been doing what I usually do in my speed builds and not really talking about what's happening on screen, but we're in the kitchen right now, or the kitchen and the dining room, and the room is a little bit cramped, so it's a bit of a small space. I was a little bit limited in how big I could make the rooms because I still wanted to stick to the whole tiny house system. So it's a bit on the smaller side, but I playtested it and everything was working fine. So there weren't any issues. And also in this room, I at first really stuck to the white, yellow, and blue color scheme. I think it was inspired by the tiles I used in the kitchen because, as you can see, I used these blue Basegame tiles with the yellow details on them. But later I went a bit more colorful, and especially when I changed the swatch of the chairs in the dining area, I think this was the point where I decided to make everything just way more colorful. I also added some of the paintings that your Sims can do in game as wall decorations, because I feel we are really limited what wall art is concerned if you're only building with the base game. And I think I said this before in one of my videos, but I'm realizing it every time that I'm trying to build something with only base game and one pack. There's not a great variety of wall art, and although they added some swatches to some of the wall paintings, there's still not a lot to choose from. And yeah, so again, I added some of these paintings and tried to give them some frames, because the frames that you can give them in live mode are just plain black and don't always fit the style of an interior. And what the style of the furnishing is concerned, I really didn't know exactly what I was going for, and it ends up being very, I don't know, all over the place, or eclectic if you want to word it more positively. So it's a mix of more rustic furniture, more traditional one, and some things that are more modern. But I think that's actually kind of realistic, because in real life you usually don't get all your interior furnishings in one go, but you maybe have stuff from the places that you lived earlier, and then you buy some new stuff, and you probably have some stuff that doesn't go together very well. But this kind of reflects the whole process of making a place a home, so to say. So I think it's a normal thing to just to have stuff that doesn't necessarily match, and some things that are older and some things that you kept maybe because you have some memories related to them, and then sometimes you just get some new things and piece together your house and home. And this is what I think happened in this house. So you will notice some things have more of a sleek modern touch, then some things are a bit more rustic. For example, in the bathroom there, I imagined that maybe they did some renovations, had a new shower, but they still have the toilet that is a bit more on the rustic side. And this is basically what you can find all over the house. So yeah, I just think that it gives the interior kind of a realistic touch. So it might not be super aesthetically pleasing, but I think it's cozy and cheerful. Again, as I said, I ended up using lots of different colors in some of the rooms. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say about the interior style. And I also didn't really think through who is living here, so I just imagined it would be two parents and their child or teenager. I will talk about the teen-child situation a bit more later, but I didn't really come up with a huge backstory or imagined what they would do for a living or what hobbies they would have. I just thought that maybe the parents were into gardening and maybe liked art and were creative, and that's why they have all of these paintings on the walls and why everything is just so colorful. But I didn't really come up with a detailed story for them or have any specific Sims in mind. Now we are in a living room, and it was really, really tedious to make this room come together because I was so undecisive on what swatches and which color scheme I wanted to use, and it was honestly so painful editing the footage that I had because it was really just me changing the swatches all over again. I changed them so many times, and it was such a pain to watch this and have to somehow shorten this and make a consistent video out of this. But I really didn't know what color scheme I wanted to go for, and I changed all the wallpapers and the carpet and the swatch of the couch. I changed it so many times, and I think it was in this room when I really decided to go very colorful. So at first I thought I would stick to the color scheme of the first room. So in the dining room and the kitchen, I went, as I said, with that white, yellow, and blue. And I think at first I wanted to do this for the entire house, but then I just thought, yeah, whatever. I will just go for all the colors because after all, it's a spring themed home, and spring is just obviously very colorful with all the flowers. And yeah, why wouldn't I just make this house even more colorful with all types of different color schemes? And yeah, this is what I ended up doing. So instead of just keeping that blue and yellow theme, I just went with, I think, with pink, with teal or light green, blue, and I don't even quite remember, but I think I already mentioned. I don't actually know if I already talked about this, but I ended up placing another one of these in-game easel paintings that your Sims can do, and I placed it over the couch, and this was kind of a inspiration for the entire color scheme of the room. So again, it took me quite some time to decide on one color scheme and to decide which colors I wanted to use, but then I really got inspired by this painting, and I think I used some sort of a greenish tone and some pink swatches, and yeah, it is really very, I don't know, unique, you could say. Like, it's definitely not everybody's cup of tea, probably. And personally, I don't know if I would like that in my home, but I just thought, again, that the Sims living here just really like colors and this cheerful and happy energy and just this very colorful interior that is just reminding of springtime. And I think in this room you can also see nicely what I was talking about before, that there's really a mix of more modern furniture, of newer furniture, and of some things that are somewhat more rustic and traditional. For example, there are these plates on the walls which are kind of very old-fashioned, and it seems a little bit outdated to me, but it's maybe something that belonged to their grandparents. And then the TV stand is a little bit more rustic, and the couch table is more modern and more IKEA-like, and the lamps are also a bit more modern. So it's really a mix of all kinds of different things, all kinds of different pieces, and I think it just adds a lot of personality to that space. Also, I wanted to add some sort of radio to the room, and I couldn't really decide on which I wanted to use. And as I mentioned in other speed builds, it is really annoying to me that radios in The Sims do not really work properly if you put them on a surface where they don't snap to. So if they're not snapping, then you can switch them on, but the listen to the music interaction does not work. So that's super annoying because it makes the entire thing pointless. So I had to find something that snapped to a surface, and I didn't really find a radio that I liked and that I could place anywhere in the living room. And then I found this radio or the speaker from the BackyardStuff pack, which I have never used before. And although it's a wall-mounted speaker, I realized that if I place it right above the surface of the table, it really looks like it was just lying on the table, and I thought it looked surprisingly good, so I actually used this one. And if you look at it from the side, you can tell that it's mounted to the wall, but I didn't think that was a big problem, and maybe I'm going to use it more often because I actually like how it looks. It looks a little bit more modern, and yeah, it was an interesting discovery. And we are already in the next room, which is the parents' bedroom. And in this room, the color scheme is very yellow, blue, and pink. And yeah, when I was done with the entire house, I kind of realized that actually the teens' bedroom seems way more major and toned down than all the other spaces of the house, and especially much more than the parents' bedroom. And yeah, of course, it's not that you cannot like colors and brightness and things like that if you're an adult, but it's probably usually something that is more associated with younger people. But in this house, it's really the other way around. You will see this when we get to the teens room. It's much more toned down than the entire rest of the house. Another thing that I was thinking about when I did the parents' bedroom was if I overdid it with the clutter. And I know I usually tend to do this, and I usually only realize this when I'm looking back at the apartments or houses that I created, but I just really like to place a lot of clutter. And the reason for this is also that I want my builds to feel lived in, and I'm always thinking about what would be realistic to have in a certain space. And in bedrooms, for example, I want to make sure that it looks like as if there was enough storage space, because you have some clothes that you need to store and some laundry and just some bed sheets and things like that. So I always like to place enough storage space. I like to place mirrors and just surfaces where I think that it would be realistic to have them. And I always think of the places that I've been in real life and think, what do have people on their nightstands, for example? What do they have in their living rooms? And I know not every space, not every apartment or house is that cluttered. And I know some people prefer somewhat more minimal style, but I'm just trying to furnish homes in a way that it feels realistic to me. And I know that some things don't really matter in The Sims. Like, for example, you could have one tiny closet or something, and it would be enough, because for the gameplay in The Sims, it doesn't really matter how much storage space you have in your bedroom. But I kind of want to make it feel realistic, and I just also want to place decorations because, yeah, most of the time I'm not trying to build something minimalistic, and I think sometimes I go a little bit overboard with this, and I think sometimes it's a bit too much, but I just really want to make it feel lived in, like it was a real home. And I don't know how you feel about it. Do you think that I'm overdoing it, or what do you try to achieve when you're building in game? Again, I would love to hear your opinion on that. Also, in the parents' bedroom, I placed a fish bowl on the side table. And I know I was just talking about realistic clutter and things like that. I don't know how realistic it is to have a fish bowl in the bedroom, but I thought it fit the space nicely. And I also really like the fish bowl object. I know that in real life you probably shouldn't have a fish in such a tiny bowl, but in The Sims I think it's quite cute. And I also placed a goldfish in there. Like, you can click on the bowl and then you can choose what fish you want to have in there. And I think you can only choose between 3 fish, but I chose the goldfish. And while I was taking screenshots, the fish was kind of glitching out, and it looked so weird because it was basically just flat. And I think you can even see it in one of the screenshots at the end. The fish is just like a line, is just completely flat, and it was so funny. But then I fixed it, and so there's also one screenshot where the fish looks like supposed to be, but there's also this other one where the fish is just, yeah, looking kind of a bit off. But yeah, that was just a funny thing that happened. And we're already in the next room, which is the study area. It's actually some sort of a multi-purpose room. So it is like a study where there's a family computer. The teen has their own laptop, but I just thought that at some point when they were still a child, it might have been like some sort of a family computer. And there's also a bonsai tree, and I've been placing a lot of them in my builds recently because it was an object in game that I never really used. I was never really aware of it and never really thought about it. But as I once used it in one of my personal gameplay saves, I realized that it was very handy to just level up your gardening and flower arrangement skill if you do not have a lot of space to do it otherwise. And it actually looks really nice if it's cut in shape. Like, the default form of the bonsai is kind of terrifying. It's just this huge shapeless bush, and it's not necessarily very appealing, but once your sim has actually cut the tree in shape, it looks very nice. And there are so many different forms in which your sim can shape this tree. I didn't really know that until I played with it in my own gameplay, and since then I'm kind of fond of this object, and I kind of want to use it in every space now because you can build up your skills and it looks very aesthetically pleasing if it has a certain shape. So I'm definitely going to use that bonsai more in the future. And if you didn't know about the bonsai, you maybe want to try it out yourself, because I think it's actually a very nice object, and it's Basegame. And yeah, we are now already in the last room of the house, which is the teen's room. And at first I think I didn't even want to make it for a teen, so I think at first I had a child in mind. But because the whole house was so colorful and so pastely and dreamy and spring-like and cheerful, I was so tempted, like so tempted to make this room for a goth teen. So I really wanted to make everything black and just make it very edgy and very much the opposite of the entire rest of the house. And I did that before in a build that I made years ago. It was actually very sleek and modern and almost minimal, and then the teen room was just all black and goth and just very over the top dark and edgy. And yeah, I was very tempted to do this again because I really liked how that teen room turned out back then. But then I couldn't really decide if I really wanted to do that or if that would be too specific. And yeah, in the end, I just decided not to do it, but instead I just still went with the idea of making the room for a teen instead of for a child, but I didn't go for the whole goth idea, but I just made it a little bit darker than the rest of the house. But yeah, it has these blue walls, as you can see, and I just made it a bit more toned down, more muted. The colors are a bit cooler, and it's not as crazy colorful as the rest of the house. I just thought that maybe the teen wasn't that much into their parents' aesthetic, and so they decided to furnish their own room in a style and in a color scheme that was a little bit more on the subtle side. And I think it's just very normal that kids' rooms and teen rooms don't match the aesthetic and the style of the rest of the build, because obviously, especially in your teen years, you just discover your own style and your own preferences. And so I think especially in a teen room, it is just very, very natural that style goes in a different direction than in the rest of the house. And yeah, so I think that really shows here. I imagine that the teen living in this room would be into sports, but also into movies. So I just put some random sport equipment in the room and a lot of sports themed posters, and there's also a trophy on the desk, and there are also some medals or something. I don't think that's the right word, but I think you know what I'm talking about. And I also thought that they were into movies, so I put some movie posters on the wall, because obviously you do not have just one interest most of the time. But yeah, I just think it's a very typical teens room, but I also thought that maybe they were still on the younger side. So there are also many things in this room that are probably a remnant from their childhood rooms. So there are also still some plushies and some toys that they maybe kept from earlier years, because you don't always get rid of everything that you had as a child when you grow up to be a teen. So sometimes you keep things because you have special memories connected with them, or you probably keep your favorite plushies. I mean, at least I kept my favorite plushies, and some things you just don't want to get rid of even when you get older. So yeah, that's also something you can find in this room, and I think it turned out really nice. And yeah, that was pretty much it for the build, but I had to go back outside to change some things about the garden, because when I was playtesting I realized that the planters were not accessible, which was actually not that surprising, and I don't really know why I thought it would work in the first place, because this niche between the fence and the house was just kind of narrow. There wasn't enough space to access the planters from all sides. But then I just swapped the place of the outside dining table and the planters, so the grill and the dining table are now in this niche, and I think it does even make more sense in there, because now the dining table is directly under the kitchen window. And then we're pretty much at the end of this video, so thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please consider hitting the thumbs up button and subscribing if you did. It would be so much appreciated, and it would really help this channel to grow. This build is also up on the gallery for download. My ID is LaTalpaVolante. If I forgot to mention anything, all the information are also in the description down below. If you still have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment down below. I always love to hear from you guys, and I hope to be back very soon with a new video. And in the meantime, just have a great week and stay safe. Bye!